Achewillow, Season 5, Chapter 5, Chicken and Other Bad Things. "You're taking this too personally," Eric says, either trying to comfort or annoy me. The jury is still out. It should make me feel better that Ophelia had to pay for the privilege of coming into my cafe to insult me. However, it'll take more than the scant $5.50, minus overhead and ingredients, to soothe my irritation. Which is something that Eric, more than most, should understand. As kids, he'd always get more mosquito bites than me. Something about him attracts the insects. Even after hours spent hiking through the woods or eating next to a pond, would leave my skin almost intact. Meanwhile, my big brother would come home covered in itchy red swells, tearing at his skin with all the rage and despair of a man on fire. He would rather scratch himself bloody than endure the itch. A dozen painful sores better than fresh mosquito bites. So it is with Ophelia and I. There's precious little I wouldn't do to have her out of my life, but like a bug bite, whenever you think the irritation is gone, it only comes back more intense than before. "And how else should I take it?" I ask, sliding my glass of cider a few inches across the table. After Ophelia's uninvited and unwelcome intrusion, we disbanded our little meeting. There was nothing left to discuss, each one of us having their own tasks ahead of them. "I'm just saying," Eric explains as he makes room on the table for a plate of chicken tetrazzini. "Maybe she's a bitch to everyone like that." We ended up at Lorenzo's, the sole Italian restaurant in Achewillow. Like any sensible local, I ordered a large margarita pizza because that's what Louis, the cook, knows how to make. Everything else on the menu is fine. And fine is fine, but why settle when you can get good? It's a lot of pie, but I know for a fact that it will not go to waste. "She does not," I insist, giving the waiter a chance to put my dish down in front of me. "In fact, she makes a point of showing how nice she can be to everyone but me." "Any chance you might have done something to offend her?" Preposterous, of course, but Eric doesn't know the history. "None," I assure, watching him wrap pasta around his fork, waiting for him to take a bite. "It's about the witchcraft." His chewing slows and his lips tighten. So far, Eric's been understanding of all the far-fetched tales I've fed him. The Hunger Demon, Agnes, the ghost of Gary Remington, each a fanciful story that he's made an effort to accept. There is, however, a fine line between acceptance and belief, and I feel like his current reaction is indicative of his faith faltering at last. Or the chicken tetrazzini is even worse than I thought. "She fancies herself a better witch than me, which is okay," I admit. "But for some messed up reason, she seems to think we're in some sort of bitter competition." The chicken must be acceptable, as Eric puts another bite in his mouth before smiling and nodding. I still haven't touched my pizza, and I'm starving, but outrage takes precedent. "It's just..." Eric hurries to swallow. "You've never been one to accept when someone beats you at something. Didn't you get kicked from cooking school for thinking you're better than a teacher?" "I am better than Chef Gagnon. That man couldn't taste the difference between a green onion and shallots. But Ophelia isn't my teacher. She's just some girl who likes to dress up like an old woman and knit sweaters." Eric puts his fork down and takes a calm sip from his water. My teeth grind as I watch the familiar face of a man working hard to deconstruct my arguments. "So," he says, a prelude to what I already know will come out of his mouth. "She is a better witch?" There it is. This is his gotcha moment. I'm sure that, to Eric, this is all just teasing. Witches, as far as he's concerned, are probably just crystal enthusiasts who burn sage to cleanse houses. Or, in my case, someone who's putting a little too much importance on their vocation. I get it. What harm is there in making fun of the little sister's absurd coping mechanism? Especially after the great fortune of having a whole cafe fall in her lap. She is, I answer, to his surprise. She is, but it's more complicated than that. Ophelia knows more than I do. She looks like someone trained her at this. The stuff she's been able to do is leagues beyond what I can accomplish. For now. I have his attention. Thick fingers toy with the handle of his fork as Eric debates whether to keep eating. But that's the thing, I continue after taking a bite of pizza. Unlike her, everything I've done, everything I've learned, I've had to come to by myself. I know you think this is all garbage, but believe me, it's real, and I have a talent for it. He frowns and hesitates, but after much internal debate, Eric starts eating again. Slow and with little enthusiasm, probably wondering if his little sister truly has lost her mind. It's not that I don't believe you, he says, pushing the chicken to one side of his plate, away from the pasta and sauce. I mean, all your friends seem to think this is all perfectly normal, but it's all about measures, you know? I do. Measures shape the world. Too much of one thing, like, say, heavy cream in a chicken tetrazzini sauce, and the whole thing comes off balance. Not enough, and the sauce stays runny and lacks flavor. I'm not a broom and cauldron witch. Neither is Ophelia. But we're not just really into crystals and tarot reading either. Sometimes it's about hitting the right quantities of things. And I've grown pretty good at judging quantities. I get it, I admit, chewing on delicious crust. And I'll show you how serious this is on the way back to my place. But until then, I let the word hang as I cut another slice off my pizza. See, there's a meal with just the right measures. Just the right amount of sauce to give a tang of acidity, balanced by slices of mozzarella just thin enough to melt, but thick enough to be noticed. I don't make pizza, but if I did, this is how I hope it would turn out. Meanwhile, Eric keeps pushing his food around the plate. Until then, he takes the bait. I smile and slide a piece of pizza over to him. We eat. The plan was, after dinner, to keep avoiding the Achewillow. According to the schedule I put together after hiring Stefan, his shift ends at 9. If I can't be there, he'll finish up the extra hour as overtime and close the doors at 10. Not that I expect Ophelia would still be there, but do I really want to take that chance? Of course not. Just seeing her sitting on one of my chairs, drinking my latte, knitting her stupid sweaters with her obnoxious cat on her lap, that's a lot to endure on my part. But I also don't exactly want to go home yet. Home is where Eric is going to insist we continue our conversation on witchcraft. It's all well and good to tell him about it, spinning my history in Achewillow into tall tales, but quite another to demonstrate just how real it all is. Where are we going? Eric asks, the question hinting at irritation. Somehow, he decided to take the leftover chicken home with him, even after rejecting it in favor of my extra slices of pizza. Don't you want to see the park? I jogged through it this morning, and honestly, I'm a little tired. It's just a small detour, I tease. There's something I want you to see. Achewillow Border Park. Like an autumn fog, weird things seem to coalesce there. When have I walked the gravel paths at night without encountering something strange? Or, at the very least, had the wind pull at the hair at the back of my neck? What better introduction to the heart of Achewillow than to feel the town's soul before staring at it with the naked eye? What? Seeds of irritation bloom into annoyance, but I insist. You'll see. But he didn't see. Nor did he feel or smell or even hear. Of all the nights for Achewillow Border Park to behave like a normal place, it sure picked the wrong one. Then again, why am I surprised? This isn't a zoo. I can't just bring any random person with me and expect the strange park denizens to appear. The tall man or the lady with the stroller, even patients, are all conspicuously absent. It would be like inviting someone to share a dream. I think, for a second, that I see a white bat flitting between two maple trees, but even that I can't be sure of. Well, Eric breaks the silence. We're here. He towers over one of the benches that surround the tree stump at the center of the park, his neck bending this way and that, making a show of looking for whatever it is I promised he'd see. The sound of his hand crushing the foam container from Lorenzo's squeaking in the night. My shoulders slump as I give one last look around myself. The shadows remain still, and there are no apparitions of ancient legendary trees filling up the sky. Never mind, I mumble and turn to walk home. What do you mean, never mind? What did you want to show me? He sounds almost angry, which is something I haven't heard from Eric in years. If you have an older sibling, you know the tone I'm talking about. There's no threat in it. Rather, it's a mélange of irritation and frustration that foreshadows hours of tense silence. Impatience stretched from a moment and into what could be the rest of the evening, or more. Come on. I rip the foam container from him before taking his hand. We're going home. With as large a stride as I can muster, I pull at my brother, tossing his leftovers in the closest trash can I can find. I thought you had something to show. I'll show you at home. He sighs and relents. I've tried to be subtle and sneaky about it. I wanted to ease him into it all. I wanted to ease myself, too, rather than toss both of us into the cold water of revelation. But if Eric is to help me figure out the Dufour legacy, if he's going to be of any use in tracking down the missing pets of Achewillow, he has to be fully on board. We climb up to the apartment 2 steps at a time. I don't even insist he takes off his shoes before walking in. So far, Eric has had access to the living room, where he sleeps, the washroom, and the dining room. I even let him use the kitchen, though that sacrifice must have taken years off my life. My bedroom, however, has remained sacred, forbidden territory. Until now. It's nothing special. I've barely changed a thing since moving in. Everything, from the furniture to the paisley armchair and doilies on the nightstand, screams old lady, but I'm comfortable leaving it as it is, for now. There is one item, though. A foot-tall, domed object covered with a linen sheet that feels a little out of place. Not for its aesthetics. Rather, it simply exudes a wrongness. It doesn't belong in this room. It doesn't belong in this world. I can see from his body language that even Eric can feel it. What am I looking at? There's no more annoyance, no more irritation. Instead, I can hear the frayed nerves in his voice. He's not from Achewillow. The weird and wonderful still rattle his heart like it did mine. His feet are at the edge of the precipice, and even though he can't see the abyss before him, he can feel that one more step will change everything. I pull off the linen, revealing a bird cage. Not just any bird cage, either. One made of solid brass, but with the bars wrapped in strands of newspaper. Whatever pieces remain bare, especially near the top hook, are covered in arcane glyphs and religious symbols. As outlandish as that all may be, it pales in comparison to the creature that sits at the bottom of the cage, pulling itself up in a laborious stretch. Skin in shades of iridescent blues and purples, and eyes of glowing golden yellow, it is like no animal Eric has ever seen. Humanoid in shape, if not in stature, the creature could fit in one's pocket. Its right wing is torn, hanging at an odd angle on its back, but it expresses no pain. The thing snarls at being disturbed, blinking at the sudden light, but softens upon recognizing me. That, I explain, as matter-of-fact as I can be, is a macaron sprite. I don't think Eric slept well, nor can I blame him for that. It's not shocking enough to be presented with a live fairy, caged for his viewing convenience, but he had to spend the night knowing the creature slept 2 rooms over. I let him stare at the macaron sprite for as long as he wanted. The only restrictions were that he not put a finger through the bars, and under no circumstances should he let the fairy out. Sleep was elusive for me, too. I never sleep well when things in town get too Achewillow. If the weird of our little village starts to seep from the surface, like suds pushed out of a sponge when you press it down, I simply cannot rest. The bedroom feels almost abuzz with the vibrating echoes of my thoughts. One question doesn't have time to bounce off a wall before I ask myself another. So much for catching up on rest. By the time I open up the cafe, I've completed my transformation into a caffeine zombie. More machine than woman, I serve coffee, tea, and pastries like a robot. Well-honed customer service reflexes allow me to fill orders, count change, and reply to compliments from within a dissociative fugue state. I know what is happening, but I'm too tired to be an active participant. Only the violent ministrations of the coffee machine grant me the occasional jolts that keep me standing. It would be so easy to crawl under the counter and take a nap. Imagine my relief at seeing Stefan through the Achewillow's front window, strolling by on his way to take over for the afternoon. I've never loved a man more than when this boy relieves me of duty after such a sleepy shift. The best part is that I know that with Stefan, drama rarely follows. Which is why it's with mixed feelings that I watch Annabelle sprint out from behind him, colliding with Stefan hard enough that my poor employee tumbles to the ground. Not before grabbing onto Annabelle, pulling her to the concrete sidewalk in an explosion of loose leaves and papers. Their combined cry is enough to attract the attention of everyone in the cafe, yet I can't even manage a chuckle. We all watch, intrigued, as Annabelle gathers her documents. Stefan, dutiful as ever, helps out best he can. His only thanks? Having the papers snatched from his fingers as Annabelle rushes inside.
"I've got it,"
she screams, damn near elbowing a customer in the process. "That's great," I greet her. "But could you perhaps not kill everyone on your way to tell me?" Turning back to the register, I attempt to take a customer's order. Joseph Patrick will ask for a London fog with a shot of caramel and a bagel. I'll explain that I don't have bagels, and then he'll order a croissant instead. That's Joseph's usual. It makes me wonder for a few minutes if I should start making bagels, before dismissing the idea. Annabelle, however, will not be denied. Rude and obnoxious, she cuts to the front, waving her papers in my face. They're stacks and stacks of printed posters, each featuring the photo of a lost pup or kitty, all with the words "missing disparu" in large, bold letters. That was supposed to be Eric's job, to gather a list of the missing pets. Annabelle's task was to contact the owners and learn how their pets disappeared. "Annabelle?" I ask, fists closed on my fresh new apron to contain my irritation.
"We've had the answer under our noses for a year, Miriam."
"Annabelle."
"We could have this solved this afternoon. I'm sure of it. Annabelle."
Usually, I find her energy to be a refreshing, vibrant addition to my days, like the bright, sour taste of citrus in a key lime pie. It's alive with flavor, much like Annabelle. Right this minute, though, I need to be more of a financier than a key lime pie. Subtler and more complex, but also a little less exciting. And that means attending to my customers.
"Sorry."
She finally steps back and away from the register, opting instead to slump on a stool at the counter, sheepishly sorting through her papers. It's tempting to think that maybe that was a little stern of me, but damn it, I have a business to run. While the creeping tendrils of curiosity are squirming through my brain, I have to at least get some work done. If I can't keep this cafe afloat, then I can't help anyone, can I?
"Sorry, Joseph, still no bagels,"
I explain, anticipating the question.
"Can I get you a croissant instead?"
He nods, and I prepare the order in short measure. As usual. Olivia once told me that there's some magic to people's usual. There's a ritual to it, she explained. But sometimes the real magic is how expedient it makes things. From the corner of my eye, I can see Annabelle shuffling on her stool, like a dog waiting to go for a walk. Every time I turn so much as 10 degrees in her direction, her lips part in an attempt to bark out her solution. And damn if I don't want to hear it. I'm pouring coffee, thanking the mother that I only got a little singed by a stray jet of steam when I finally succumb.
"All right, out with it."
Lit up like a slot machine that hit the jackpot, Annabelle perks up on her seat. Eyes are wide with the pride of a 3-year-old who just learned to tie her own shoes. Whatever the eureka moment was, she's very proud of it.
Darling and dragon.
She says it like it's equal parts genius and obvious. A solution as simple and magical as mixing egg yolks and flour to make pasta. And it is genius. Dragon, always accompanied by his life partner Darling, is a miracle tracker. If anyone can help us find a missing corgi, and judging by the papers in Annabelle's hands, 24 more animals, it'll be Darling and Dragon. Except, I explain, I think Mr. Pickering has had quite enough of us and isn't likely to lend out his dogs again. Last time we borrowed Darling and Dragon, it wasn't exactly with Richard Pickering's blessing.
I'm sure that in this case,
Annabelle counters,
he would be glad to help. This is for the community, after all.
There's no knife in my kitchen sharp enough to slice between the sarcasm and optimism of that statement, so I wave her off to attend to my customers again. The line at the register has grown, plunging 4 customers deep. It's a little unusual at this time, between breakfast and lunch, especially on a weekday, but as my thoughts linger on Roberts's vet bills, I welcome any surge in business. A few familiar faces and some new in the mix. Abel Tucker, a local pilvist, waits first in line, wearing the robes and beatific smile of his cult. He'll have some matcha latte with whatever unsweetened pastry I've got on hand. Lucky him, I've been experimenting with some Gruyere scones lately, and they're turning out rather fantastic. Behind is Millie Lebois, one of Annabelle's contemporaries and fellow student. I've seen her around the cafe participating in study groups. She's a shy but voracious one, and I expect she'll order a chicken wrap with ranch sauce. It's one of my more popular items with teenagers. Fills their nearly bottomless stomachs for what I think is a fair price. Then there's my old friend. The scars are healing well, and what might have become a terrible disfigurement has mended into pockmarks and scratches. He could explain it away as acne scars instead of hundreds of tiny macaron sprite-inflicted flesh-tearing bites.
Orléans,
I welcome him with a warm smile.
We haven't seen you in a while. What can I get you?
I'm always a little nervous when a member of the so-called Inquisition shows up at the cafe, which used to be a bigger issue back when Orléans and his colleague Alessandria were regulars. Since the Sprite attack, I don't know if either has dropped in more than once.
I'll have a coffee and 2 chocolate chip cookies, if you please.
He grins with anticipation. For a witch hunter, Orléans' always been a big fan of the local witch's cookies. I don't know if he's just bad at his job or if my baking might have bought me a reprieve from his scrutiny.
And,
he continues, stepping aside to let the last man in line talk. Middle-aged, with an obsessively maintained beard, this man has all the features of a silver fox. He wears his gray hair over tanned Mediterranean skin and piercing brown eyes. There's an unmistakable Hollywood elegance to his half-smile and controlled movements. He takes a moment to lean on the counter, craning his neck to look over to the display and scrutinize the coffee machine. A squint in his eyes, he purrs his order. I'll have one of these croissants, and I trust you can make a killer espresso. The way he presses on the word killer could be described as unctuous. Creamy and thick, it's a rich pronunciation, taking his time with every syllable. Oh, it does, I confirm, amused by how unintentionally well chosen the word. Espressos are especially tricky to make with Achewillow's coffee machine. Too bad Eric isn't here to sacrifice in the attempt. I grab a cup and saucer and get to work infusing the drink. The balancing act between acting confident while remaining wary of the coffee machine's malicious and harmful intents is a tricky one, but a necessity to save face in front of the new customer. She is a beauty, isn't she? The newcomer says, running his hand with almost sensual attention over the brass tubes of the coffee machine. Careful, I warn. Those get hot. Hot is good for coffee, is it not? Looking at him while tamping the grounds into the portafilter, I notice that he and Orleans are dressed identically, though the stranger pulls it off with more style. Dark blue suits over white shirts, they follow the same dress code, down to the gold cruciform cufflinks. And my throat tightens.
I should introduce you.
Orleans cuts in, mug in one hand and cookie in the other.
You'll be particularly happy to learn this, Miss Dufour, but the paperwork finally came through.
The paperwork? I ask over the hissing of the machine.
Yes.
Orleans seems so excited.
Alessandria and I submitted it 2 years ago about your little demon problem.
Demon problem? Laugh lines materialize at the corner of the newcomer's eyes as he extends a hand weighed down by a collection of gold rings. These are not the well-preserved fingers of a man who works behind a desk pushing paper. Like mine, his hands have seen wounds and healed stronger for suffering them. While my scars are from burns and cuts, I can only guess where his calluses and scratches come from. "Hello," he says, a smile as sweet as sugar on his lips. "My name is Francisco. I'm what you would call a demon hunter."
Ouch!
Stunned, my concentration shattered, I lose track of the steam wand, and the machine seizes the opportunity to burn my hand. It's a bad one, too. For 2 years now, Orleans and Alessandria have stood out as some sort of joke to me. The Inquisition, a ridiculous concept in this day and age, especially in the little town of Achewillow. Though, as far as ludicrous people go, I was quick to learn not to underestimate how dangerous they both could be. And now there's a third one, an inquisitor that specializes in demons. Something tells me that this Francisco won't bother with forms and paperwork if he comes across any infernal or unholy monster. I don't think he's one to issue a formal warning to a succubus should he find one. Gritting my teeth through the pain, I finish putting together the inquisitorial food and drinks. They pay, and Orleans tips generously, as is his habit. They talk and joke like colleagues discussing the office holiday party as they walk to a table near the window. The scene plays out with such mundane normality that a casual observer could dismiss it with ease. Not I. Superimposed atop my view of the dining room, I see the cafe as the Inquisition left it the last time they attempted to face down a demon. Not a piece of furniture remained standing, and the large glass window up front, now letting all that glorious spring sun through, was shattered into a carpet of razor-sharp shards.
You okay there?
Annabelle asks, inspecting my scalded hand. But I ignore her worry. I know what to do with a burnt hand probably better than most at this point. Annabelle, how about we give Richard Daniel Pickering a visit? It's been a while since I've come this way. All my past visits have involved carrying a thermos of soup or some food in plastic containers. I'd wade through snow under a crisp moon between leafless trees. Ideally, we would have taken the car to visit the Pickering farm. But crossing the fields is part of the journey one must make when walking from downtown Achewillow to the clearing where the Donselites are held in fall. Today, on a gentle spring afternoon, Eric, Annabelle, and I face none of these usual struggles. The fields are empty, still waiting for corn or wheat to grow in sufficient quantities to matter. The weather is clear, without snow or even a muddy puddle to slow us down. In any other circumstances, these would qualify as ideal hiking conditions. Eric, in particular, seems to be enjoying the workout. Unburdened with the knowledge of our destination, he forges ahead, waiting for either of us to correct his trajectory, but so far it's a straight line until we can see the farmhouse. Already, to the south, I can make out the stable and the garage of the Pickering farm. A forest green John Deere tractor is half pulled out with the engine cover yawning open. I can't see it from here, but I bet as we get closer, we'll find Pickering himself working on his tractor.
You know,
Annabelle says, uttering her first words since we left the cafe.
Maybe you're right. Maybe this isn't my best idea.
You think now is the time to get cold feet? I say.
What better time is there? Mr. Pickering hasn't seen us yet, so he can't sick darling on us. We could just head back to the Achewillow, and I can start making calls to people with missing pets. You don't even have to worry about those pastries. I'll find them a good home.
She's referring to the large cardboard box in my hands, the one meant to bribe Richard Daniel Pickering into lending us his dogs for some canine-assisted sleuthing. I ignore her suggestion, chuckling it off as a joke on her part. When we make it to the tractor, however, there's no one here making repairs or performing maintenance. All the standard accoutrements are laid out, like utensils on a kitchen counter. A socket wrench set, along with greasy screwdrivers and rusty old red toolbox, are strewn across the dirt next to the John Deere. Someone certainly set about getting work done, but whatever the afternoon plans were, they were interrupted.
Think you went in to get a drink?
Eric asks, sitting on his ankles to take a look at the tools.
Maybe,
I reply without conviction. No. While Pickering isn't one of my frequent clients, and I would never claim to know the man, he doesn't strike me as one to stop mid-task to get a glass of lemonade. I could see him going off to get a missing tool, but there's so much hardware lying around that I can't think of what could be missing.
You hear that?
Annabelle whispers, putting a hand on Eric's back. He hears it. I hear it too. A voice swallowed by the soft winds of spring and half lost between the farm structures. It's a dirge sung in a single voice. Mournful and longing, it wails, desperate for something lost.
That's,
Annabelle starts.
Darling.
While anyone who's met the giant Great Dane mix would feel reasonable fear at hearing her voice, the wailing lacks the usual bite Darling is known for. As we move our way around the garage and towards the stables, following the dog's heart-wrenching call, we come upon Mr. Pickering. He's bent over what, at a quick glance, might pass for a small horse. The animal jerks and pulls, stretching taut the leash that holds it to a large fence post. It's Darling, and hearing her calls brings back to mind the scene at the back of the Achewillow when I found a raccoon missing a leg. "Mr. Pickering?" I call out, careless of how he might react to our intrusion. The farmer turns, wearing a mask of anger. His teeth, exposed in a snarl, look on the verge of cracking from his jaw's pressure. He certainly didn't expect us, and our presence is not a welcome surprise.
"Mr. Pickering, is everything all right?"
I step forward, cardboard box held in front of me, not as an offering, but almost as a makeshift shield from the farmer's fury. His features are slow to soften, and never do they get any warmer than solid ice cream. But I no longer feel the anger focused on us. There's another target for this rage.
"Does it look like everything's okay?"
He snarls, letting Darling slip from his grasp. The giant dog races first towards us, spittle dripping from exposed fangs. She doesn't bark, nor does she even make it close. Instead, she races in another random direction, barking first at the trees and then at the dirt. I've seen that sort of anger before. Usually we see it in people. It's the rage of unfettered loss.
"Someone took Dragon,"
Pickering explains.
"right from under our noses. And that someone is gonna pay."
Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Achewillow to donate. Achewillow has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Achewillow for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.